Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our beloved Alok. Namaste. We are continuing Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 11, The Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Mind. We're on page 263.
Yes.
And perhaps we could begin a few lines above.
Yes, because these are marvelous lines which we had read.
Exactly. Perhaps all things are real?
No, even before that.
Okay.
That's where we had stopped.
Yes.
And we are, Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us about these beings who are what we call them as gods, and in other traditions as archangels and archmasons. They shape our humanity and earthly events while they are there. So we think that we are the ones who are the doers, but there is something between us and the one divine who they intercede. We'll see those words. They intercede, they interpret.
Not a priest, though.
Not a priest, though. Yeah. These people are also, they have their limitations, but let's first see their possibilities. So they are the ones who intercede between the divine will and earthly life.
Yeah.
Their very beautiful description is in Sri Aurobindo's poem Ilion, where before the war begins, Sri Aurobindo sets the stage with the gods. And all the gods are there and they are deciding. Zeus actually comes down and sees what's going to happen. And earthly beings are ignorant of what's going to happen. They are happy. So he sees that the lady of the house is tending the fire. She has bid goodbye to the child. And the husband will come back from the farm. Or so she feels. But Zeus knows that today is the day when it will be all destroyed and given to fire. So there is this kind of a divine irony in it. And that's what Sri Aurobindo brings out there. So these are the gods who shape our lives. But there are also human vessels and instruments of these gods who receive communication from these greater beings, and themselves they become like vibhutis, and they become like those who execute God's plan. But first we'll read these 4 lines. He has said that we all can become one with the gods. Again and again, the mother reminds us, man is a god who has forgotten this. And she was asked, why was he made to forget it? So mother says, so that he can learn the lesson of humility. Otherwise, he'll be arrogant. So he had to forget this. He had to be beaten and put on the ground when he really discovered that, I'm nothing. And then the door opens and he's ready for that something which is much greater than his scope.
Except to be nothing and none.
Yes.
Dissolve time's work.
That thou mayst be all.
Yes.
So this is why we have forgotten. But then either through a process of evolution, but there is a point of time when the grace meets us and lifts us out of that and makes us one with a God. And we recover what we have lost or what we have forgotten. That's what is being described. It recovers its renounced imperial right. And I love this line, renounced. Yes. And it reminds me of the story of Esau and Jacob, where some of us may be aware of this. And mother says a simple story with very profound implication. And the story goes that one of them comes back and he's very hungry. So he says, I want my pot of porridge, I want my porridge. And then he goes on to say, well, if you give me this porridge, I'll renounce my birthright. It's an expression that he's so hungry. But mother says this story looks so simple, but aren't we all doing the same? For the pot of porridge or the pound of flesh, we renounce our birthright. And what is this birthright? The birthright is to be free, to be happy, to be divine. And that's what is being, indicated here. It recovers its renounced imperial right. It wears once more a purple robe of thought, a kingly thought. No more the dull, drab thought of earthly life. And knows itself the ideal's seer and king. communicant and prophet of the unborn. So once again, man discovers his true nature, and then he becomes a god among gods.
And he's an heir to delight.
Yes, and that was the marvelous line.
Yes.
Heir to delight and immortality. Anandasya putra, amritasya putra. But I think what is important is that we have to get rid of the false identities. As long as I am my father's son, as long as I am my surname, as long as I am my nationality, as long as I am a religious so-and-so, I cannot recover this. Because I am tied to my surname, to my card, which is identity, which is printed on my card and not on my heart.
My business and profession.
Yes. So to recover this identity, we have to keep that away. Well, that's how it is. I remember jokingly, someone had once in one of the conferences asked me, can I have your card? So I said, if you have a paper and pen, I'll write. So I wrote it. So he felt that, for some reason that either I am too poor or something that I don't have a card. He said, I'll gift you, can I make some, 100 cards and gift it to you? I said, please don't do that. I am trying my best to forget and you will keep reminding me. So we have to forget this to recover that. And now we continue further.
Yes.
All things are real, that here are only dreams. So if you talk about the ideal, then, even about Mother and Shobinder's work, supramental. Where do I see it? Well, when Mother was asked this question, Mother said only like knows like. And she gave a very good example. She says, a stag has passed in the forest, and then villagers are asked, what has passed? And they don't know because they have never known a stag. And we had a similar story like that in our village, that an elephant passes and people are discussing that what has passed. And they never have seen an elephant, they don't know an elephant. So the most wise man of the village is called, and he is asked, can you decipher from the footprints as to what has passed? He said, most likely it must be a deer who had tied chakki to his feet. Grindstone to his feet. So here we call them as dreams. They are not real for us. But for the person who has risen to these levels, they are not only real, more real. When Sri Ramakrishna was asked, is God real? He said, more real than what you and me are.
Most important point.
Yes. And he'll reveal to us that all things are real, that here are only dreams. In our unknown depths sleeps that reserve of truth. This is half the truth, or maybe 1/10 of the truth. There is a reserve of truth which gives a meaning to all this. But we invert the whole thing and we try to interpret that on the basis of this alone. But there is a reserve of truth. Look at so beautifully Sri Aurobindo uses this half a phrase. On our unreached heights they reign and come to us in thought and muse, trailing their robes of light. They come to us as thoughts, as suggestions, as gift of vision, as poetry that foresees. And maybe when we are back in our normal state, we may wonder, Mother describes the story of a young girl who, when she was in that state of exaltation, she could sing marvelously. She could speak beautiful things. But when she came back to her normal, so-called normal state, human state, then she couldn't believe that I am the one who had these things. And, is it really true? She couldn't believe her own creations. So they come to us as thoughts, but very often we have a tendency to regard such people as, idealists and dreamers, and education makes sure that we forget it, and parents will put a lock around it. When we are retired, then we can talk about it. So that's what comes here. But our dwarf will and cold pragmatic sense. This is the cold pragmatic sense. So I sometimes imagine, having gone through a similar situation, that in 10th standard, when parents asked me, what do you want to become? I said, I want to become a poet. And they were horrified. So they consulted an astrologer. And he tried to convince me that don't take all this. How will you take care of your bodily needs and things like that? But this is the state of everybody. If a child says, I want to become a poet, it's like, are you sure? Cold pragmatic sense and dwarf will. It just wants to make sure that our everyday life and its needs are taken care of. It doesn't like to go beyond it. So dwarf will. Admit not the celestial visitants, awaiting us on the ideal peaks, or guarded in our secret self unseen, yet flashed sometimes across the awakened soul, hide from our lives their greatness, beauty, power. Both things he reveals to us, that they are on the peaks of glory and they come from there. But Sri Aurobindo also says they are within us. So time to time they suddenly like a flash come to us. And that's what often I wonder. We all see people who die and, who are sick and they go through old age. But what thoughts do we get? Normally, old age. Oh my God, let me, go to a doctor who may give me some anti-aging cream, Botox treatment, this, that, all these things. But what makes a Buddha a Buddha? He looks at old age and he says, this is the future of humanity. He looks at somebody else's illness and starts looking for a radical remedy. And that's what makes a difference between, the extraordinary and the ordinary experience the same things. But that is the difference. Everybody has a life, and I remember Sri Aurobindo's letter to Mrilani Devi that so many million children are knocking at my door, and I know I have the power to uplift this fallen race. That sentence strikes me as a marvelous revelation.
Yes.
But normally our cold pragmatic sense will say, no, first I must look after my own family. And all that he asks her, will you come with me? Are you ready to share my life? You will become a Shakti. That's how he puts it. Will you be my Shakti? Imagine. Will you be my Shakti?
Yes.
So, our present feels sometimes their regal touch. Our future strives towards their luminous thrones. Out of spiritual secrecy they gaze. Immortal footfalls in mind's corridors sound. Wow.
Yes.
Our souls can climb into these shining plains. The breaths from which they came can be our home. That's our home. And as long as we have the sense of this little thing as our place, then we cannot really belong to that which is our true home. So many stories like that, where people had to, and probably this is the lesson that is taught in strange ways, like when I look at Pandava's life, how they became instruments of a divine working. The fact that they had to repeatedly wander away from their home, as if accursed, was a very good lesson that when they actually fight the war, they are not going to fight it only for the kingdom, but for something greater, because they had learnt it that way. And the Gita speaks of one of the signs of the evolved being as Aniket. Aniket means he has no home. So I used to wonder, how do these people live? When I had read, they had no homes. Now I understand. He doesn't have a sense of proprietorship. He lives as if every house is the divine house, or he lives as if, he claims nothing, owns nothing, and yet all homes are his own. Swami Vivekananda's life is a classic example. That phase one has to go through. His privilege regained of shadowless sight. So now Ashapati has regained that privilege. He has risen, ascended to those planes of the greater mind. The thinker entered the immortal's air and drank again his pure and mighty source. And This is often, I have seen some books, even here there was a book on Karl Marx and Sri Aurobindo and Carl Jung and Sri Aurobindo. And I keep on saying that this is injustice to both. It's like, comparing peaches and oranges, because they are too different. It's like comparing the sun and the little flame. All the lights that we see all around, that is the source of that. So these are little lights which have come away and are lit by that source, eternal source. And there we have to go. So thinker, there is another place where Sri Aurobindo writes, the toiling thinker grew wide and still.
Yes.
So
And he capitalizes thinker.
Yes. So it drinks from its pure and mighty source, immutable in rhythmic calm and joy. I think the word rhythmic is very important, because all speech that is born from a high plane carries within it a rhythm. So if you read Sri Aurobindo's prose, it is actually poetic prose.
Correct.
If you read, and one of the signs that one is reading correctly, often people ask, life divine and synthesis. So normal standard recommendation is break it into parts. You comma and try to understand. There's an analytical way of doing it. But my way is, you read, after a while you will start getting in it a rhythm. Like, the human aspiration. And if you, the earliest dawns of mankind, if you read through that whole sentence of 5-6 parts, you'll really feel it's not just prose, it's poetry of another kind. Because that higher truth comes as a rhythm. It's not perchance that Upanishads, the Gita, the Vedas, Kabir's Vani, Guru Bani, they are all poetic.
Yes.
It's not that they had a fascination for poetry, but because poetry can bring that rhythm also. So it's rhythmic thought.
And Sri Aurobindo speaks so clearly about it in his letters on poetry.
Yes.
That everything is rhythm.
Yes.
And the first rule of poetry is rhythm.
Yes.
Yes.
And here it breaks down. So he speaks of that. Immutable in rhythmic calm and joy. Another thing about this thought that comes from the higher plane is that it brings with it a certitude which carries with it peace and joy. Invariably. And joy is a very important sign. So people often ask that, we don't know whether we are understanding Savitri or not, but we get a joy in reading it. So you have already gone beyond the stage of understanding.
Yes.
If you are experiencing joy and peace, that's wonderful. He saw sovereignly free in limitless light the unfallen planes, the thought created worlds. So unfallen, they have not felt the touch of tears in mortal things. And why they are unfallen? Because their substance obeys the thought. Here, it is at the mercy of substance. Thought is at the mercy of matter. That's why when we are in a fatigued state, it is very difficult to think with clarity unless we have learned to dissociate the mind from the body. Otherwise, when people have high fever or when they are physically, the nervous system will not allow. There is something called as brain fatigue, and that's why one of the signs how Sri Aurobindo used this instrument. For hours he could write or speak. Now, this itself is a sign that the instrument was so beautifully prepared that lines after lines could flow through the brain, through the hand or through the mouth so beautifully. But ordinarily, thought is at the mercy of material substance here, but not there. So he describes that where knowledge is the leader of the act and matter is of thinking substance made.
Yes.
So what you think, matter changes itself according to that. And he says knowledge is the leader of the act. Here we act and then we learn and know. Probably after many actions and hopefully. Many times we never learn. But there, knowledge comes and then the action follows.
Narad speaks about 600 lines at one time.
Yes.
In Savitri. 600 lines.
And that's why, if nothing else, this itself is only the divine can speak like that.
Yes.
Even the Gita, which is in a flow of so many, of course, interrupted with Arjuna's Vacha, Sri Aurobindo says it was in a supernormal consciousness that Sri Krishna spoke the Gita, which he lost later on. And when he was asked, then he exhorts Arjuna, you have forgotten all this? So when he once again speaks the Gita and those truths, it's a very different flow altogether. And here is Sri Aurobindo, just lines after lines, page after page to the dim children of earth were given. Feeling a heaven bird poised on dreaming wings, answers truth's call as to a parent's voice. So there is not only truth imagination and truth thinking, but also truth feeling. So the feeling itself is true. And he describes that in the Life Divine when he speaks of the triple transformation, that it's not just about thought. Even at the level of feeling, truth begins to operate. And it gives you the right feeling at the right time. And this has nothing to do with our mental frameworks. So it's amazing, how it works and operates. Form luminous leaps from the all-shaping beam, and will is a conscious chariot of the gods. So wherever the will directs itself, there the forces rush to create. So these are the greater worlds of greater mind. And life, a splendid stream of musing force, carries the voices of the mystic suns. No more a life which is struggling, which is full of error and grief, or swings between joy and sorrow. A thought that is a shadowless light, and a life which carries within itself a joy and splendor of the suns which are hidden to us. It's a luminous life. A happiness it brings of whispered truth. So such a nice line. This is truth doesn't speak like imposing itself that way. It whispers sometimes very gently, and it fills the heart with so much joy. So one of the signs of dwelling in the higher states is there is a happiness becomes natural, and one of the signs that we are deviating from the path. So people have these mental rules. So if they cannot follow mental rules, they feel they are deviating from the path, and they begin to make it worse by all kinds of other thought structures. But a simple rule is, if you are feeling joy within, you are on track. If you are feeling depressed, if you are feeling despair, then somewhere you have deviated. Whatever be your outer condition, something is amiss, because the touch of the divine always fills the heart with joy. Invariably, it's such a good indicator. One can almost see that there is a set of actions which takes me away from this joy, makes me restless, makes me sad, and there are other kinds of things which make me happy, naturally happy. It's a simple indicator.
And Mother speaks about depression being one of the worst problems of yoga.
So we could say that happiness is true happiness, very subtle happiness, is the GPS. So, you're on track. And there runs in its flow, honeying the bosom of space. Look at it. What a marvelous word it is, honeying. I don't know what grammarians will say about it. It is like somebody is pouring sweetness all over. Honeying the bosom of space within.
Sri Aurobindo often takes a noun and makes a verb of it.
Yeah.
Often.
There runs in its flow, honeying the bosom of space, a laughter from the immortal heart of bliss. So there is a sweetness, there is a joy, and all this is there in those worlds. They are perpetually happy, and that can be our share. The beauty is that it's not that they are the gods. And what do we ask when we go to Ganpati? Give me my pocket full. He says, okay, you have your pocket full, but you have not asked for joy in the heart. That's my share. But if you ask for joy in the heart, then nothing else you'll need.
Yes.
So beautiful this is. And the unfathomed joy of timelessness, the sound of wisdom's murmur in the unknown, and the breath of an unseen infinity. In gleaming clarities of amethyst air, the chainless and omnipotent spirit of mind brooded on the blue lotus of the idea. So this is the higher worlds where the gods, the great gods, they are brooding on the idea. And Mother has used the word blue lotus. It's the original. And it has a reference to Sri Aurobindo, very interestingly. Anyone remembers the
Centenary year.
centenary year? When Sri Aurobindo's centenary, she was asked to choose a flower for the centenary, and she chose the blue lotus. She said specifically for this year of Sri Aurobindo's centenary, we choose the blue lotus. And blue lotus has great significance even in Buddhist literature and mystic literature. I am not sure where this blue lotus is found.
They have found it now.
Seemingly, probably some Egypt or something.
They have
I don't
found
know.
it, yes.
Not lily, lotus.
Not
A blue
that.
lotus, yes.
If they found, that means that true idea is expressing. Because till last I had read when I was making this compilation on remembrance of Sri Aurobindo, for which I had chosen the blue lotus for the cover. So I had made a lot of search for it, and it remained a mystic truth.
Yes.
So blue lotus, the original lotus. A gold supernal sun of timeless truth poured down the mystery of the eternal ray. So they are basking in the supramental light. It's not yet the supermind, but the rays that come down, it's pouring and pouring upon these vessels of that truth, these great gods,
Yes.
and human beings can arrive there. Through a silence quivering with the word of light, on an endless ocean of discovery. It's the word of light which comes when the mind is quiet. It cannot come when there is agitation. It cannot come when, we are trying to, in a scholarly way, trying to mix and match, pick up something here, something there, and try to. When the mind is quiet, it flows. And Sri Aurobindo is saying endless. This knowledge that pours has no limit. That's why sometimes I feel that the word Vedanta can sometimes be misunderstood. Because knowledge, there is no end to discovery. In evening talk, Sri Aurobindo was asked. He said there is always something to know. Because knowledge is endless. The moment we say that we have known, that means we have not known. And that fills the heart with wonder and youthfulness.
But he says that he could have written 100 life divines and still we wouldn't
Yes.
get it.
Even for the smallest of things, because it's endless. It's a discovery. It pre-exists, but you have to discover it. Far off he saw the joining hemispheres. So from that kingdom of the greater mind, he's seeing far above the pararth and the upper earth, supramental and beyond, and the lower triplicity, they are being joined. So still at that, the plane of the seers. Far off he saw the joining hemispheres. On meditation's mounting edge of trance, great stairs of thought climbed up to unborn heights, where time's last ridges touch eternity's skies, and nature speaks to the spirit's absolute. It's a supernature which one finds there. This mounting on, this thing about trance, Sri Aurobindo clarifies, there is not one trance as we understand. Each time the consciousness ascends to the next higher level, it goes into trance. Because to it is, there is no other way it can describe it. But when we become accustomed to living in that, then it will climb still further and there will be a trance. So trance is not just one, it's a generic word if you like, but there are many successive trances through which the soul can move till a time comes when there is no more trance, because even in the supramental one is awake. And that was one of the things that Mother asked Sri Aurobindo. She said, by the way, what is this trance that we hear so much about in India? Have you experienced it? No, she said, I have never experienced it. She was conscious fully, even in the supramental. And Sri Aurobindo said, nor have I. Because even in his waking state, looking at things, he was aware of the supramental consciousness. And Mother goes on to say, even when my eyes are closed, when she seemed to be withdrawn in trance, very often we'll see these words the disciples use. And then when she comes out, she says to Champaklalji, it's there in Champaklal Speaks. She says, you think I'm not aware? I'm fully aware even of the clock ticking. And yet she is in that state of trance where she is withdrawn into worlds beyond. So there are mediating stairs. And another interesting thing is great stairs of thought. It's a whole process of meditation which the Mother describes in volume 2, Words of Long Ago. Those who want to see it, it's very beautiful. She gives a talk on thought. And then she starts with, thoughts which are of the mundane kind, thoughts which are of the next level, thoughts which express our desires, feelings, and then she goes on. And then she speaks of meditation. And she speaks of a king. She says, I am giving a hint. She speaks of a king when he went from one level of thought to another, to another, to another, till finally he reached that point where it was all the highest thought. And even Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. The Vedas speak about the 9-headed thought and the 10-headed thought and the 7-fold thought. So one can use thought to climb. And the greatest thought or the highest thought that one can ever conceive is, as Sri Aurobindo said, that the divine is in all is in the divine, and all is the divine. So thought can be used as a stair to climb up. It's such a great power given to us, and we don't tap it. It's there within us. Today I was asking the children that, how you can create reality. So, 14-year-old, and they are thinking of this, that. I said, it's a power within us, all of us. And then suddenly one of the child says, by imagination. I say, exactly. The brain does not differentiate between imagination and what you call as physical reality. It doesn't. That's the beauty of it. You can create reality. It was like an aha moment. I said, but you have to learn to use it. It's there given to us. But it's just going into all kinds of directions. Morbid thoughts, morbid imaginations, making it real.
Yes.
Maybe we can read a few more lines just to start, and then we can get back on Sunday. There is a break here, and now Sri Aurobindo, after giving us an overview, taking us step by step, because he has spoken of stairs of thought. So this stair of thought he is going to reveal to us, but step by step. And there are the 3 main stairs, after which we run into the overmind, and then the supramental. A triple realm of ordered thought came first. A small beginning of immense ascent. Above were bright ethereal skies of mind. A packed and endless soar, as if sky pressed sky, buttressed against the void on bastioned light. So it was light which was defining their limits. And easily one could get from one to the other, from one to the other. Such a beautiful,
Yes.
And how he's using the word bastioned.
Yeah.
It's something which you, hold on to, and like a rail. And he's describing it so beautiful, like you could hold it and go on to the next level. Bastioned light. The highest strove to neighbor eternity. The largest widened into the infinite. But though immortal, mighty and divine, the first realms were close and kin to human mind. Their deities shape our greater thinking's roads. A fragment of their puja can be ours. These breadths were not too broad for our souls to range. These heights were not too high for human hope. This is the higher mind. And the mother has said this is the birthplace of religions.
Yes.
And that's why when you read religions, they speak about rules and regulations. Because that's how it operates. It gives form. This is the birthplace of religion, the higher mind. And if you go beyond, then you will not talk about religion. Because then you are beyond all these, you end up seeing the divine everywhere. Where is he not? And right now we ask a question, where is the divine? And then we would simply say, where is he not? So I asked children today, with that we can end. I asked them that, when do you think is a good time to pray to God? So they were saying morning, because in their morning prayers in the school they have the prayers. I said, why? Other times belong to whom? Then they thought about it. He said, you can pray anytime. I said, and where? Can you pray to God in the bathroom? So initially they said, yes. The logic is he is everywhere. So one who is everywhere and all the time, there is no time to pray to him. You can pray anytime, anywhere. Of course, if you fix a time when in the initial stages, it helps. It's like God probably waits for us. So, but you can talk to him anytime, pray to him anytime, anywhere. And then I asked, which is the best prayer? So they had not read. So, which language? Sanskrit or this or that? Well, the prayer that rises from the heart, rises on a crest of emotion, wave of emotion, as Sri Aurobindo puts it. And one girl from Odisha had stumped me with this. It was a classroom where 8th standard girls were sitting in one of the remote villages. And I was just asking to them. And one of the child asked me, which language does God understand? So I said, some of you must be knowing. You must have prayed to God. So one girl promptly, I said, yes, tell me. She said, Odia. Odia. I said, why do you say so? She said, whenever I prayed, Mother has listened. So her logic was very clear. Odia. I said, yes, because it should be the language from the heart, not somebody else's prayer.
There's a beautiful letter from Sri Aurobindo that I remember with great love. He says, and if you could pray in the morning, and perhaps once in the evening, and maybe at lunchtime. He puts it so gently to us.
And the thing is that invariably this freedom is lost the moment you come to the higher mind. You fix a time for prayer, you fix a ritualistic prayer, it must be of a certain form, it must be addressed to a particular God, and God must be feeling very amused, what have they made of me? So, and then the last question which I asked was another very beautiful one. I asked them that, okay, what kind of relationship we should have with God? And prompt came a reply from one of the young girls. She said, friend. I said, excellent. But religions would have nothing of it. Because if God becomes our friend, what happens to the priest? He will, poor fellow, he needs to survive. He has children whom he dreams of sending to America. So just one line, we'll stop with that. A triple flight led to this triple world. We'll stop here and continue on Sunday.